So, I never expected to be writing this like ever. I'm still in shock tbh. Quick background. I'm 34, divorced for 3 years with primary custody of Mason, 10, and Lily, 8. Their mom moved across the country for a job opportunity and gets them summers and holidays. Not ideal, but we make it work. 2 weeks ago, I got called for this massive project in Belgium. The money was insane. Would clear my student loans and boost the kids' college funds. Only catch, had to leave in 36 hours and stay for 3 weeks. No exceptions. My child care fell through. Regular sitter was on vacation. Best friend's family was away. Sister lives in another state. I was about to turn it down when my mom randomly called to check in, which never happens. Some context. My parents have always treated me like shit. Dad's a retired military hardass who thinks kids should be seen not heard. Mom's all about appearances in their fancy retirement community. Growing up, nothing was ever good enough. When I got divorced, they blamed me, even though it was mutual. They've always criticized my parenting. Too soft, too many hugs, not enough discipline. When I mentioned my situation, Mom immediately offered to watch the kids. I was hesitant AF, but desperate. They live an hour away in the same house I grew up in. My gut said no, but my bank account said yes. Plus, they'd been decent during short visits before. I sat the kids down and explained. They weren't thrilled. Grandma and Grandpa's house isn't exactly Disneyland, but I promised daily video calls and reminded them this money would help us finally take that vacation we've been planning. I packed everything they'd need. Wrote detailed instructions about routines, medications. Lily has mild asthma, school stuff, emergency contacts. First few days seemed okay. Video calls showed the kids playing outside telling me about cookies Grandma made. Normal stuff. Mason was learning about Grandpa's military medals. Lily was helping in the garden. I started thinking maybe I'd misjudged them. By the end of week 1, calls got shorter. Mom kept saying kids were busy or tired from school. When I did see them, something felt off. Mason was super quiet. Lily looked exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. When I asked if everything was okay, Mom would interrupt with, "They're fine. Stop being so overprotective." On day 8, no one answered my usual after-school call. When I finally reached them that night, I could see Lily had been crying. Mom kept talking over her, saying she was just being dramatic. When I asked to speak to the kids alone, Mom claimed the iPad was dying and ended the call. I texted my neighbor Danny, who lives down the street from my parents. We went to high school together. I asked if he could drive by and check things looked normal. He said he'd try the next day. Day 10. I was in a meeting when my phone blew up. Text from Danny. "Dude, call me now. Emergency with your kids." I called 911 in. "Your kids are outside in the snow." I ran out and called him. He was freaking out. "Your parents locked them out. They're in pajamas. Lily doesn't have shoes. It's freezing and snowing. I've got them in my car with blankets. Police and ambulance coming." Then I heard Lily crying. "Daddy, Grandma said we're trash. She said you don't love us enough to stay. That we ruined your life." Mason was sobbing. "They made us sleep in the basement. Grandpa hit me with his belt when I asked for breakfast. I literally fell against the wall." Booked the first flight while Danny kept me updated. Kids going to hospital to check for hypothermia. Lily's asthma flaring up. Police questioning my parents. I called my ex, who immediately booked a flight, too. Danny told me he'd seen the kids pounding on the front window as he drove by. When he approached, my dad came out yelling that they were being punished and to mind his business. Mom locked the door and closed all the curtains. Danny heard screaming from the backyard and found my kids had been thrown out the back door. The 9-hour flight was pure hell. I kept thinking about what else they might have done. How long had this been happening? Why didn't I see the signs earlier? At the hospital, the kids clung to me like they were drowning. Both had lost weight in just 10 days. Mason had bruises on his back from the belt. Lily had a sprained wrist from falling down the basement stairs, which I later learned was from being pushed. They were dehydrated and exhausted. The stories they told broke me. From day 2, the abuse started. Making them eat separately. Cold food or just bread. Endless chores. Taking away their devices except during my calls when they were threatened to act normal or else. Screaming for making noise. Making Lily sleep on the basement floor for crying too much about missing me. Hitting Mason with a belt for asking when I was coming home. The final straw. Mason accidentally spilled juice at breakfast. Dad lost it. Screaming about ungrateful brats and how they were ruining their retirement just like their father ruined his legacy. He dragged both kids outside and locked them out, saying they could freeze until they learned respect. When my ex arrived, we were 100% united. My parents would never see our children again. We'd get restraining orders, press charges, whatever it took. Next day at the police station, I saw them sitting there all tearful, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that the kids were playing outside and accidentally locked themselves out. The cops didn't buy it, especially after seeing Mason's injuries and Danny's doorbell camera footage. When they spotted me, they rushed over crying, trying to hug me. Mom wailing about the kids are lying and we were just teaching discipline. Dad saying, "We did the same with you and you turned out fine." That's when it hit me. They had done the same to me. The memories I'd buried came flooding back. The basement punishments, the belt, the hunger. I'd convinced myself it was just strict parenting. I stepped back and said quietly, "You will never see me or my children again. But that's just the beginning. You tortured my babies. Now I'm going to destroy everything you have." The look on their faces, for the first time ever, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Good. They should be afraid. It's been 3 days. Kids are with me in a hotel. My ex is staying nearby, helping with them while I handle legal stuff. Danny and his wife have been bringing food and clothes, giving statements. I've taken leave, hired the most aggressive lawyer in town, and started gathering every piece of evidence. I'm planning exactly how I'll dismantle my parents' lives, their reputation in their precious retirement community, their standing at their church, their finances, everything, all legally but thoroughly. They hurt my children. Now they'll understand what real consequences feel like. This is just the beginning. I'll update when I can, but right now I'm focused on my kids and making sure my parents pay for every tear my children shed. Update 1. Hey, it's been a week since my last post. Thanks for all the support and advice. Things have been intense. So, I'm still at the hotel with the kids. We've been looking at rentals since our lease is up soon anyway. And TBH, I don't want the kids going back to that house with all the memories of leaving for my parents. My boss has been surprisingly decent about extending my emergency leave. Still pissed I left Belgium, but once I sent him the hospital photos, he backed off. The first pediatrician appointment was way worse than I expected. The doctor found more bruises that weren't visible initially. Finger marks on Mason's upper arms where he'd been grabbed. Bruises on Lily's legs from being disciplined with a wooden spoon, and both kids were showing signs of malnutrition after just 10 days. The doctor immediately referred us to a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. Their first therapy session revealed stuff that made me want to burn my parents' house down. Apparently, my mom told the kids daily that I probably wasn't coming back, that Daddy doesn't really want you and is happier without you slowing him down. She told Lily that her asthma was fake and took away her inhaler as punishment for being dramatic. Mason was forced to stand in the corner for hours if he mentioned missing me. I can't even type this without my hands shaking. Then I got a call from my Aunt Karen, Dad's sister. She was furious with me, saying I was destroying the family and kids need discipline. Turns out my parents have been texting everyone in the family that the kids were out of control and making up stories because they didn't like the rules. They claimed Danny was interfering and blew everything out of proportion. I lost it. Sent her the hospital photos and told her to never contact me again unless it was to apologize to my children. She went silent, then hung up. An hour later, my cousin texted that Aunt Karen was in shock and needed time to process. Whatever. The police investigation has been frustrating. My parents' community is small and they've lived there forever. The responding officers knew them from church. While they documented everything, I could tell they were uncomfortable. One even suggested that sometimes kids exaggerate and asked if I was sure I wanted to put the children through a legal process. I told him to do his fucking job or I'd be calling his supervisor. Meanwhile, my ex Jessica has been amazing. She's extended her stay to help with the kids and found a local child advocacy center that's helping navigate the legal stuff. She's been sleeping on the hotel room couch while I take the other bed and the kids share the big one. We're not getting back together or anything, but it's reminded me why we worked well as co-parents. Yesterday, I had to go to my parents' house to get the rest of the kids' stuff. I brought Danny with me because no way was I going alone. My mom tried to block the door, crying about how this is all a misunderstanding and we love those children. I pushed past her and went straight to the basement. What I found made me sick. They'd set up a literal punishment corner with just a thin blanket on the concrete floor. Mason's favorite stuffed bear was in the trash. Lily's tablet was smashed. I took photos of everything for the lawyer. When my dad tried to stop me from going into his office, I shoved him away so hard he stumbled back. In his desk drawer, I found a journal where he'd been recording every infraction the kids committed and the appropriate correction, like it was some military operation. As we were leaving with the kids' stuff, my mom grabbed my arm, crying that they were just trying to undo the damage I'd done with my permissive parenting, that the kids were soft and needed structure, that they were doing what my ex-wife should have done years ago. I yanked my arm away and told her the only damaged people here were her and Dad. My attorney says we have a solid case for a restraining order, but criminal charges might be harder given their standing in the community. But here's where it gets interesting. Turns out my parents recently joined the board of their fancy retirement community. They've been bragging to everyone about their executive position and community leadership. I did some digging through old emails and found the community bylaws. There's a whole section about moral character required for board members. And any board member who becomes involved in criminal proceedings is automatically suspended pending resolution. Also found out they've been using my kids in their church newsletter, posting photos and talking about what wonderful grandparents they are. The pastor there has known me since I was a kid and always took their side when they were harsh with me. I'm meeting with him tomorrow to show him exactly what kind of Christian discipline they've been practicing. Oh, and the best part, my dad's precious military pension and their retirement savings are tied up in investments managed by his old buddy from the service. The same buddy whose daughter was my high school girlfriend, who my dad forbid me from seeing because she wasn't good enough. We've reconnected on Facebook and turns out she's now a financial advisor who's very interested in the ethical violations her father's company might be committing by working with child abusers. I'm not just getting a restraining order. I'm systematically dismantling every part of their carefully constructed image. The retirement community, the church, their social circle, their finances, all completely legal, all based on simply exposing who they really are. The kids are slowly improving. Mason asked to sleep with the light on. And Lily still flinches when adults raise their voices, but they're eating better. The therapist suggested getting them a pet for comfort, so we're looking at shelter dogs this weekend. Last night, I received a letter from my parents' attorney demanding grandparent visitation rights and claiming I'm alienating them from their grandchildren. They've apparently told their lawyer I have anger issues and am unstable. The fucking audacity. My lawyer laughed when I forwarded it to her. Said their case won't stand a chance once the medical evidence and police reports come in, but it shows they're not backing down. That's fine. Neither am I. They hurt my kids. They manipulated my family. They've been abusing their power for decades, and now they're going to learn what real consequences feel like. I'll update again when there's more. Right now, I'm focused on helping my kids heal while making sure my parents never harm another child again. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my last update. Sorry for the radio silence, but things have been moving fast. We finally got out of that hotel and into a rental house. Nothing fancy, but it has a fenced backyard for the kids and our new rescue dog, Luna. A super gentle lab mix who follows Mason everywhere. So, my revenge plan, it's not just happening, it's working better than I expected. First, that meeting with my parents' pastor went exactly as planned. Brought all the medical reports, photos, and the therapy notes with the therapist's permission. Pastor Mike has known my parents for like 30 plus years and initially tried to downplay everything, saying we should seek family reconciliation and that parenting styles differ. I pulled out my phone and played him the voice memo of Lily describing how Grandma made her pray for forgiveness for being a burden to everyone. His face changed immediately. Turns out my mom's been running the church's children's ministry for years. By the next Sunday, she'd been temporarily relieved of her duties pending an internal review. According to my cousin, who still attends, my parents stormed out during announcements when it was mentioned. The retirement community board thing has been even better. I emailed their board secretary, keeping it super factual about the ongoing investigation, including the case number and detectives' contact info. 2 days later, my dad was suspended from the board. My parents tried to fight it, claiming I was just being vindictive because of strict discipline. But then the community president, who has grandkids of her own, asked to see the photos. Game over. My dad's military buddy, who manages their investments, was trickier. He initially refused to meet with me, claiming client confidentiality. So, his daughter, my high school girlfriend Ellie, arranged a chance meeting at a coffee shop where she was meeting her dad. When I showed up, he tried to leave, but Ellie blocked him and insisted he look at what her second parents had done to innocent children. The guy literally threw up in the bathroom after seeing the photos of Mason's back. He can't legally drop them as clients immediately, but he started the process of transitioning their portfolio and apparently warned my dad that several of their investment partners have morality clauses that could impact their returns. My dad's been calling him daily, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. The restraining order came through last week. My parents can't come within 500 feet of me or the kids. The judge also specifically mentioned they can't contact us through third parties. My lawyer says the criminal investigation is proceeding cautiously, but there's still a good chance of charges. I know this all sounds like it's going smoothly, but trust me, it hasn't been easy. My parents aren't just sitting back taking this. Their lawyer sent a formal letter to my employer claiming I abandoned my project in Belgium due to mental health issues and suggesting they should reconsider my reliability. Fortunately, my direct supervisor has a kid with asthma himself and understood the emergency. But I still got put on a performance improvement plan for the next 6 months. They've also been calling everyone we know. My old high school teachers, my college roommate, my neighbors, telling them I'm having a breakdown and turning the children against them. Most people see through it, but I've lost a couple friends who think I'm overreacting. The worst was when they showed up at the kids' school. I'd already informed the administration about the situation and provided copies of the restraining order, but they still managed to corner Mason's teacher in the parking lot after hours, told her they were worried about the children's welfare and tried to get information about their behavior in class. The teacher shut it down immediately and reported it, but it freaked everyone out. Yesterday was the monthly board meeting at their retirement community. I made sure to attend, perfectly legal since it's open to the public, and I stayed beyond the 500 feet my dad tried to defend himself, claiming this was all a family disagreement blown out of proportion. I waited for public comment period, then calmly walked to the microphone. Didn't raise my voice, just methodically listed each injury documented by the hospital. Read excerpts from their own journal about proper discipline techniques. Described finding Lily's inhaler hidden in their bedroom drawer while she was struggling to breathe. The room went completely silent. Then one elderly woman stood up and asked my dad if he thought it was normal to make children sleep on a concrete basement floor. He stammered something about building character. 3 board members walked out in disgust. The meeting ended early with an announcement that my dad's suspension was now permanent and they were reviewing their bylaws regarding resident conduct. The most satisfying moment came this morning. My Aunt Karen, who initially took my parents' side, called in tears. She'd finally gone to see my parents yesterday and found my mom destroying photo albums, literally cutting me out of family photos while ranting about how I'd always been manipulative and planned this whole thing to hurt them. My dad was apparently drinking at 10 a.m. and talking about how he should have been tougher with me growing up. Karen finally asked the question that had been bothering her. Why did they hate me so much? And my mom just told her, said I'd ruined their lives by being born. They'd had big plans to travel the world after Dad's military career, but then Mom got pregnant with me. They did their duty by raising me, but resented every minute of it. And they saw my kids as extensions of that mistake, More obstacles to their perfect retirement. They admitted they'd been harsh with the kids to toughen them up, but insisted everything else was exaggerated. Karen was devastated. She'd always known they were strict, but had no idea they actually hated being parents. She apologized repeatedly and asked what she could do to help the kids. I told her they could use another supportive adult who believes them. The kids are slowly improving. Mason still has nightmares, but is talking more in therapy. Lily stopped flinching when adults moved too quickly around her. They both adore Luna, and having a routine again has helped a lot. Jessica, my ex, has been amazing. She's even looking at job options closer to us to be more involved. My parents tried one last desperate move yesterday. Their lawyer contacted mine offering a deal. They dropped the grandparent rights case if I ceased making defamatory statements and signed an NDA about the alleged incidents. They even offered to pay for the kids' therapy as a goodwill gesture. I laughed and told my lawyer to respond with one word. No, I'm not stopping until they face every consequence possible. The retirement community is having a special meeting next week about resident conduct expectations. The church leadership is interviewing other children who have been in my mom's Sunday school classes. And 3 of their closest friends have stopped speaking to them after I showed them the evidence. Their carefully built facade is crumbling piece by piece. And I'm just getting started. Final update. So, this is probably my last update. It's been almost 2 months since this nightmare started, and I figured I should share how it all turned out. The morning after my last post, I was making breakfast when my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo of my house, our rental house that we'd only moved into 3 weeks ago. Someone was watching us. I immediately checked all the locks and called the police. While waiting, I got another text. We need to talk. One last chance. It was my dad. He'd gotten a burner phone to get around the restraining order. I forwarded everything to my lawyer and the detective handling our case. Within hours, they were at my parents' door with a warrant. Turns out my dad had not only been driving by our house, violation 1, but had installed a tracking app on Mason's tablet before all this happened, the one tablet we hadn't replaced yet, violation 2. They found screenshots of our location on his computer. The cops arrested him on the spot for violating the restraining order. My mom started screaming that they were persecuting innocent people and tried to block them from taking him. She ended up in handcuffs, too. That arrest changed everything. The local paper ran a small story about prominent community members being arrested. Their retirement community board immediately called an emergency meeting and voted to begin eviction proceedings. 3 other families from church came forward saying my mom had been unusually harsh with their kids during Sunday school. With both parents in legal trouble, their carefully built house of cards collapsed fast. The DA finally filed formal charges. Child endangerment, assault, and reckless conduct. Not as serious as I'd hoped, but enough to ensure this would follow them forever. My dad spent 2 nights in jail before making bail. My mom got out the same day. Their attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but I pushed the DA to reject anything that didn't include admission of guilt and mandatory counseling. My parents refused both. They still insisted they'd done nothing wrong. Then came the retirement community hearing. I'd expected to have to fight, but what happened instead shocked me. My parents showed up with a binder full of evidence of my unstable behavior dating back to my childhood. School reports where teachers noted I was sensitive. Medical records showing I'd seen a counselor briefly after my parents' divorce. Even my own wedding photos with nasty notes my mom had written about how this marriage won't last either. They'd been documenting their hatred of me for decades. The board president asked why they'd kept all this if they cared about me. My mom snapped and said they needed protection from my manipulation. When asked about the children, my dad actually said, those kids needed discipline. Their father lets them run wild. We did him a favor. The board voted unanimously to terminate their residence contract. They have 30 days to move out. The church was next. Pastor Mike called a meeting with church elders where my parents were invited to share their side. My mom brought her Bible with highlighted passages about sparing the rod and disciplining children. When an elder asked about locking the kids outside in freezing weather, my dad said, Sometimes harsh lessons are necessary. They were formally removed from the congregation that day. Their social circle disappeared overnight. Former friends crossed the street to avoid them. Their longtime bridge club disbanded rather than include them. Even their own attorney seemed disgusted based on the increasingly terse emails my lawyer received. Through all this, I kept thinking they'd eventually show remorse. They never did. Instead, they doubled down, insisting they were the victims of a witch hunt orchestrated by me. Meanwhile, we were rebuilding. The kids started at a new school with teachers who understood trauma. Mason joined a robotics club and actually smiled for the first time in weeks. Lily had her first sleepover without calling home in tears. Luna the dog became their constant companion, sleeping between them every night. Jessica officially transferred to a position in our city and found an apartment 10 minutes away. We've established a new co-parenting routine that's actually working better than before. The kids spend weeknights with me and weekends with her, plus dinner together twice a week. It's not perfect, but it's stable. Last week was the final hearing for the permanent restraining order. My parents showed up looking nothing like their former polished selves. My dad had lost weight, his clothes hanging loose. My mom's carefully maintained hair was unkempt. They sat alone on their side of the courtroom. The judge reviewed all evidence, including the hospital records, therapy notes, and now the stalking incident. When he asked if they had anything to say, my dad stood up and for a moment, I thought he might finally apologize. Instead, he looked directly at me and said, "We gave you everything. A home, an education, opportunities, and this is how you repay us. By destroying our lives over some necessary discipline." The judge cut him off, saying the evidence showed far more than necessary discipline. The permanent order was granted. 5 years, no contact with me or the kids, mandatory counseling before any review would be considered. As we left the courtroom, my mom called out, "This isn't over. Those are still our grandchildren." I turned back and said, "No, they're not, and it is over." That afternoon, I received an email from their attorney. They were leaving the state, moving to Florida, where my dad's brother lives. They were selling their house now that they couldn't stay in the retirement community and wanted to know if I'd reconsider my position before they left. I didn't even respond. 2 days ago, my Aunt Karen called to tell me they were gone. They'd sold most of their belongings in a rushed estate sale and left with just 2 suitcases each. Their beautiful house, the one they'd always been so proud of, the one where they'd abused me and later my children, sold for well below market value because they needed cash fast. The final twist of the knife. I found out they'd been borrowing against their retirement to maintain their lifestyle with legal fees, the move, and the loss of their community standing. They're essentially starting over in their 70s. I should feel satisfied, and part of me does. They hurt my children, and they faced consequences, but mostly I feel free. Free from trying to please people who were determined to hate me. Free from the weight of their judgment. Free from the cycle of abuse that could have continued to the next generation. Mason asked yesterday if we would ever see Grandma and Grandpa again. I told him no, that some people aren't safe to have in your life, even family. He was quiet for a minute, then said, "Good. I didn't like who I was when I was with them." Kids understand more than we think. I know this story doesn't have a neat ending. My parents never had a dramatic breakdown or tearful apology. They never acknowledged the harm they caused. They just left still believing they were right. The kids still have nightmares sometimes. I still catch myself tensing up when the phone rings. Expecting more drama. But we're okay. Better than okay. We're building something new. A family where kids feel safe and loved. Where mistakes are allowed. Where no one sleeps in basement or gets hit with belts. Where discipline doesn't mean cruelty. And that's the best revenge I could have asked for. Thanks for listening to this crazy journey. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who you choose. Like Danny, who saved my kids, Aunt Karen, who finally saw the truth, Jessica, who stepped up when the kids needed stability, and even all of you strangers who offered support. If you're in a similar situation, dealing with toxic family, protecting kids from abuse, breaking cycles, know that it gets better. It's messy and painful, and there's no perfect resolution.